Based on the thought experiment of a train and lightning, Einstein established that simultaneity is relative, and built a grand cosmology on this foundation. If lightning strikes both ends of a speeding train at the same time, they may appear to be simultaneous to a person standing still on the ground. But they are not simultaneous to a person in the center of the train. This led to the discovery of the so-called relativity of simultaneity, which states that simultaneity varies depending on the speed of the observer. He is regarded as a great genius who used this as a foundation to create a revolutionary theory that states that time and space are relative. However, this thought experiment was crude and a kind of magic. I will reveal the trick. There are only two people in Einstein's thought experiment: P1, the person on the ground, and P2, the person in the center of the train. It is then assumed that by some miraculous coincidence, lightning strikes simultaneously on both ends of the train as it approaches P1. P1 observes the lights to be simultaneous, but by the time they reach P2 he has moved in front of it, so he does not observe them to be simultaneous. Please note that both observers are on the median of an isosceles triangle. I named this line extended infinitely the exceptional line. We need to consider more carefully whether it is appropriate to construct a theory that fundamentally changes our concepts of space and time based on the reports of two observers in this special positional relationship. Question 1. There are only two observation points in Einstein's train thought experiment. I think the number of samples is too small for the study of cosmology, which is a vast three-dimensional space. Do you think that's enough? Sample answer: of course, that's too little. Nobody in physics noticed this fatal flaw, and it continues to be so today. It was determined that no physicist understands correct reasoning in science. Consider the other people on the train. You'll see that there's another person, P3, who breaks down Einstein's reasoning. Two lights emitted simultaneously at either end of the train pass each other on the exceptional line. The person who is there at that time is P3. P3 will report that the two lights were emitted simultaneously. A true scientist who pursues the truth should never ignore this report. Question 2. Why do physicists ignore P3? Deduction of universal laws from the reports of only two people is obviously childish and wild reasoning, nothing more than a delusion. Einstein did it, so why doesn't anyone criticize him? Sample answer: cosmology is a game of making the laws of nature into mathematical formulas, so players were fascinated by the formulas Einstein presented. And no one verified the validity of his reasoning, and no one does so now. This characteristic of thinking makes physicists so easily fooled by tricks. Perhaps Einstein did not intentionally try to deceive people. It happened because he had the same characteristic. Einstein determined that the cause of the relativity of simultaneity was the difference in speed between P1 and P2. This reasoning was obviously wrong, because P2 and P3 were on the same train. So simultaneity would be relative even though their speeds were the same. The real cause of relativity of simultaneity is position, not speed. When two light sources L1 and L2 emit light simultaneously, the two lights will always cross each other at a position equidistant from them. This is the exceptional line. The two beams of light arrive at rocket R1, which is stationary on this exception line, at the same time. If rocket R4, which is traveling at nearly the speed of light, is on the exception line when one of the beams arrives, the other beam will also arrive, and an observer inside will report that they are at the same time. Of course, the same is true for rocket R2, which is traveling slowly. In other words, any observer who is on the exception line at the time will report that they are at the same time, regardless of their speed. All observers who do not meet this condition will report that they are not at the same time, regardless of their speed. In this way, simultaneity does not exist in most regions of the universe. And it only exists in extremely exceptional positions. Observers passing through the exception line will also observe that the events are not at the same time, if the timing is even slightly off. Simultaneity depends only on position and is independent of speed. The exceptional line in this thought experiment can be assumed to be an exceptional plane in three-dimensional space. Almost no region of the universe is an exceptional plane, so two events that occur simultaneously are observed to be not simultaneous. The reason is extremely simple. Because the speed of light is finite, there is always a delay in observation, but the amount of delay is proportional to the distance. So the amount of delay differs depending on the distance. The true cause of the relativity of simultaneity in the theory of relativity is the delay of light. Delays also occur in sound. A good example is the sound of a firework exploding in the distance that arrives after a significant delay. No researcher would fundamentally change their concepts of time or space to explain this, because it is simply a delay. Question 3. Relativity of simultaneity is a simple mechanism of the universe that can be explained by the delay of light. So why has it revolutionized the concept of time and space in cosmology? Don't you think that's just ridiculous? Sample answer. A simple, clear explanation is the truth. Only when it is insufficient do more complex explanations become necessary. All physicists have ignored simple explanations. Perhaps it's because they trusted their own intelligence too much. The absoluteness of simultaneity when multiple events occur simultaneously at separate locations, the fact that they are simultaneous, is objective and absolute. However, cases in which they are observed to be simultaneous, due to differences in the amount of delay, are extremely rare. The way to confirm this is simple. The amount of delay can be determined by measuring the distance from the observation point to the point where the events occurred. When the amount of delay is removed from the observed clock time and a correction value is obtained, this is absolute clock time. For multiple events, if the absolute clock times match, it is confirmed that they objectively occurred simultaneously. In this way, with just a little ingenuity and by calculating a correction value, it is possible to set absolute time in the universe. In other words, whether absolute time exists or not depends on human consciousness. If humans set it, it exists, and if they don't, it doesn't exist. The relativity of simultaneity can be completely explained by delay, so no further hypotheses should be made. No physicist noticed this mistake, and this is what caused the unnecessary revolution.